Well, I mean, labor organizing, labor movements have been reduced largely to the public sector. They're about 6%. I think we have a total of about 11% unionized. At its height in the 1950s, you're talking almost to 40%, certainly the high 30s. So there's been a war against labor unions. Mike Pence, by the way, out of Indiana, there was a huge, they de-unionized the corrections officers, the police, and so why? Because labor unions have been the most effective institution or bulwark at protecting the rights of workers, job safety, protecting pensions, protecting abuse of workers by corporations. And so corporations, following the New Deal, right after World War II with the 1948 Taft-Hartley Act, went to war against unions, and they've been largely successful. Unions have been eradicated because, remember, all of those public sector unions, a lot of them don't even have the right to strike. And so what's fascinating about the teacher revolts, we've seen them in Chicago, in Virginia, West Virginia, Wisconsin, is that they often are defying their own union leadership in terms of going out on strike. And I think what we're seeing among that last readout of organized workers is a recognition that the ability to strike is the primary weapon that has protected the American worker. And if we go all the way back to the birth of unions in the early part of the 20th century, has been the mechanism by which all of the gains of the working class have been made. The 8-hour workday, the abolition of child labor, workplace conditions, et cetera, right on down the line. And so we've seen a reversal of that, and now what we're seeing, and it's quite heartening, is an attempt by that those last organized sectors to begin to make their clout felt, and they understand that that's the only way they can get safe, fair working conditions and decent, sustainable wages.
But how did this happen?
There's been a collusion on the part of the union leadership. So, for instance, with GM, when they negotiated after the bailout, so the GM unionized workers kept their wages, whatever it was, $25 an hour, but GM was allowed to hire non-union wage laborers at like $12 or $14 an hour.
So they sold out.
They sold them out. So they would make deals with these corporations to keep their own advantages, including their pension plans and everything else. But and it was a kind of very Faustian bargain because they allowed these corporations to hire workers, non-unionized workers at substandard wages. So we do have to recognize that there has been a hollowing out of the unions. The unions were really hollowed out in the McCarthy period, and they went after the most successful union as if they were communists.
Right. If you're a worker, you're a communist.
Right. The old CIO, and then so by the end of the 1960s, you have the AFL-CIO led by George Meany and Lane Kirkland, who are cheering on Nixon's war in Indochina. Well, that is not something that would have happened in the 1930s, but it was a kind of window into, and of course they were all working with the CIA, sending union organizers over to defeat quote-unquote communist or leftist unions. So there has been, coupled with this very draconian assault on the part of the business elites against unions, also in essence a kind of control or collaboration with many union leaders who are willing to do their bidding, and we almost have to start from scratch. But I think that's what's so fascinating about so many of these teachers organizations is that they are either getting rid of that old union leadership class or even in some cases define it. When you have workers in a huge GM plant, we have to also recognize automation.
Right.
So when they rebuilt those plants. There's a famous story of Obama going out when they were going to inaugurate the plant. His plane lands, and he realized, no, that instead of like 5,000 workers, there's only 600 because it's all automated. He never even went to the plant. They sent him back to Washington. So it's automation, it's outsourcing. The deindustrialization means that we don't have those workplaces. You have service jobs like Walmart, and boy, there's the science of anti-union activity. Shifts are staggered. Any whiff of any type of organizing, they have literally, I'm not making this up, they have a hit team that flies in on a Learjet or something.
Wow.
Yeah, so and the fact that our unemployment rate is far higher than the official statistics for all of the reasons you know. I mean, you know, if you work 1 hour a week in this country, you're counted as employed. If you work 28 hours a week in Walmart, which puts you below the poverty line, you're counted as employed.
Right.
The Walton family, which makes $11,000 an hour, it has their employees handing out forms for food stamps because you qualify. So the whole system's fixed. What is it going to take? Well, we're going to have to reverse the death grip that corporate power has on every institution.